Yeah, come on, come here, hit me. Come on, don't be shy. Come here, hit me. Ooh, that hit the spot. So, who's next? Come here. If you don't come, I'm jumping to you. Yeah. My intros are getting weirder by the day. If you agree, why don't you like, subscribe and comment something? This is a pure Retaliation build. To be honest, this was just an experiment to see whether I can make Retaliation work. Turns out it's quite OP. You feel like some sort of serial killer, like Jason Voorhees, who's walking towards his enemies and they just fall down very soon. Retaliation is known from good old Titan Quest 1. There, the retaliation damage was only dealt to melee attackers. In Titan Quest 2 it's different. As long as you are in retaliation range, which is very short, any attack from an enemy results in us dealing retaliation damage. It doesn't matter whether it's an enemy melee, ranged or ability attack. The retaliation damage is dealt regardless, but just as long as the enemy is in close range. This means that also continuous attacks trigger retaliation damage many times within a short time frame, because retaliation triggers don't have a cooldown. This leads to some bosses crashing out in a weird way. They die instantly and can't cope, so that's really cringe, as the younger viewers might say. Anyhow, retaliation damage packs quite a punch. There are, however, some downsides to it. Let's go over the pros and cons. The build is super chill. After level 22 you can go full retaliation mode, which is fun and you don't need to do much, just step in front of the enemy. It's the tankiest build out there and it's super safe. As for the cons, you sometimes have a slow kill speed due to the enemies attacking only slowly. This is also probably not the best multiplayer build, because you need to be the target of all monsters in order to deal damage. The build is also a bit slow when it comes to movement speed. We maximize the retaliation damage. For that, the ideal masteries are Warfare and Forge. So, in order to become a beast, you have to get as much flat retaliation damage as possible. And then scale the retaliation damage with passives and by increasing your pierce armor. By the way, the build has insane armor values with 30k at level 45. A normal ranger build has only 3k armor as a reference. Let's go over the abilities and modifiers. Starting with Warfare's Aura, Battlefield Awareness. This only gives flat retaliation and flat armor. The Forge Aura does exactly the same. Both auras clog up your energy pool, but that's fine, this build does not use any energy. The best retaliation scaler is Forge Mastery's passive, Armor Spikes. Use the feat's physical retaliation because we only deal mostly pierce retaliation. Thorns is also great, it alone grants 120% increased retaliation damage. In total, that's another huge chunk of flat retaliation damage and a total increase of 220%, which is insanely high. We use Leap throughout the whole game to jump directly in front of the enemies so that we get those juicy retaliation triggers, which are indicated by a golden triangle flashing up upon hit. Max out cooldown charge and put 1 point in staggering leap. We also make use of the new Bulwark mechanic. This basically gives you a certain stack and you take 1% less damage per stack. The passive Hardened Bulwark increases the effect by 1.48% and gives some flat armor. Use the feat Minimum Bulwark to always be on at least 3 Bulwark. Also go for Spiked Bulwark. This increases our retaliation damage by 2% per Bulwark stack. To make us even more tanky, we use another active ability that we can toggle on and off. It's called Ironclad. This ability consumes divine cores and increases our defensive capabilities by a huge margin. I recommend modifying this ability like I did here. Armor shards and retaliation damage increase our retaliation damage, so we always toggle this skill on when we expect a lot of enemy hits. Max out Valor. We max out both modifiers that give a big increase to the total damage, which includes retaliation damage. So we use Sword of Damocles and Frenzy. Speaking of total damage, we also make use of the rage mechanic that increases the total damage per rage stack. Since we are warfare, we use some points on the passives, only to be able to use the feats rage amount and rage duration. That means if we use some primary attacks, we get our rage stack to 13 and have a nice 13% increase to our retaliation damage. Speaking of primary attack, we got some juicy stuff here too. First, max out retaliation damage, also max out onslaught. This modifier is especially important in the early game. Shield attack is also interesting because this one lets us attack with the shield, dealing huge damage that scales with our armor. Since we got an insane armor value, our primary attack is not weak. The barrier ability is also important here. This one makes us absolutely unkillable. If used correctly, meaning right before you expect a lot of incoming damage, our barrier perfectly mitigates all damage. Use the feats Guard and Fast Barrier to have a barrier up all the time. I also like to max out Reflecting Guard in order to reflect 80% of the incoming damage to further increase the damage thrown back at the enemies. Our dash needs at least 2 points in distance. This is the minimum for every build. The rest of the skills mostly boost our armor and health. Forge's tier 1 sturdy armor is good in order to make us more tanky. On tier 4 there is Heart of the Forge. Skill that up to level 5 to have some flat fire retaliation. The skill itself gives some health too. Put 6 points in reinforced weaponry to have some increase to the physical damage. This does not include the retaliation damage. Also go for weapon proficiency with critical chance and attack speed, and also martial expert for damage. Battle Hardened is another cute passive to increase our health, the regen and armor. Don't use the health feat because this one gives only 5% of health, just use the other two. Second Wind is a nice health regen passive, which is good for this build too. I also maxed out Unyielding for some more health and vitality resistance. The last points I had I used in Armor Eruption, but this one does not deal that much damage if it's not maxed out, and we don't have the points for it. The attribute point distribution is simple here. Just put enough points in might in order to equip all the armor and shields. Around 300 should be enough for level 45. Jam all the rest in vigor to boost the defense further. Let's talk about items. I use the epic shield Thorn Wall because it gives another flat retaliation damage and also a percentile increase. The build works just as well without the shield too. You can also use some random epic shield and enchant it with the essence of Archimedes' Mirror. This also gives some retaliation bonuses. This build maxes out the resistances so that it's almost unkillable. Use some torso armor with resistances and a rigid carapace that increases that sweet pierce armor, which in turn scales our retaliation damage. Shoulders need crit chance and I recommend to put a pristine plumage on it. The helm also needs that charm. The boots need a centaur hoof, so we get a little movement speed increase. This build lacks mobility, so we take anything that we can get. The centaur hoof also increases our pierce armor. I got some random bracers with the relic Marble Heart on it to boost the armor value. As for the weapon, I use the Caner's sword. This one has some nice stats that give resistances, attack speed and so on. All the good stuff that we want. and everyone has a cane of sword lying around. Let's talk about strategy, meaning how to build that hero, how to level it and how to play. First things first, we must play it as a sword and shield bozo until level 22. This is the magic threshold, because then you can make use of the main retaliation actives and passives. Until then, you use rage and heavy attack. Max out raging attack, second hit, and put the rest in wind up. Heavy strike and primary attack carries you throughout the early game. Hit 3 times with the primary attack and then make a big swing with a heavy attack. Focus on crits early game and you shouldn't have any problems. Once you have enough retaliation stuff, you can even unskill the rage mechanics and later reskill them when you are on a higher level. You don't need to search for any specific items. The might armor makes you so tanky and resistant that no mobs or bosses pose any real threat to you. So how does the build perform? Once you got the retaliation stuff going, you are an absolute menace. The kill speed can go from really fast to slow, depending on how fast the enemies attack you. At max level, with plus 20 to the enemy levels, the build still has decent kill speed and holds out quite well in terms of defense. I was surprised at how well this build performs. Retaliation damage is no joke. Every enemy hit results in a 40k to 60k retaliation damage. This is pretty good considering that you deal that damage consistently. For another build, 40k damage is a decent critical hit. The build is fun and it's one where you don't need a lot of micromanagement. You also don't need to be on edge that the next hit might kill you. There's no need to dodge anything. If it gets a little threatening, you can just always press Q to activate the barrier and you're good. Now, let's finish up with some gameplay. Thank you guys for watching and I'll see you on the next one.